All right, so you're back for more, huh? Well, you came to the right place. Here on the Deep Dive, we like to dig deep, into those stories that, well, you might think you've got them figured out, but trust me, there's always another layer, something surprising just waiting to be discovered. And today is no exception.
That's right. Today, we're going to be talking about a tragedy, the crash of Aeroflot Flight 593 back in 1994.
It's one of those events that really grabs you, makes you think. I mean, the basic story, pilot error, a child in the cockpit messing with the autopilot, it's almost too simple. But like always, when you look closer, there's so much more to it.
We're going to be using Wikipedia as our main source for this deep dive. It gives us a really good overview of the flight, the whole setup, and everything that went wrong.
We're talking about a flight from Moscow to Hong Kong, an Airbus A310. So let's set the scene right. The plane itself, not some old clunker. This is a relatively new Airbus A310neo 304.
It had the registration FOGQS, named Glinga, delivered just a year and a half before the crash, December 1992. It was powered by two General Electric engines, a really modern aircraft.
State-of-the-art stuff. And the crew. They knew this plane. I mean, they had, on average, 900 hours of experience flying this specific type.
And when you look at the individual pilots, I mean, their resumes are impressive. You have Captain Andrei Danilov, 40 years old, over 9,500 flight hours under his belt, 950 of those on the A310.
Then there's the first officer, Igor Piskaryov, only 33, but still almost 6,000 total flight hours. 440 on this plane. So we're not talking about rookies here.
And to round out the crew, we have Relief Captain Yaroslav Kodrinsky, 39 years old, just shy of 9,000 flight hours, 907 of those on the A310. And here's something interesting. He also had a lot of experience flying older Soviet-designed aircraft. That actually becomes kind of a crucial detail as we go along.
So the crew, they were experienced, knew what they were doing. On board, you had 12 crew members and 63 passengers. And it's worth mentioning, about 40 of those passengers were Russian nationals.
About 30 of them were actually Aeroflot employees and their families, along with 23 other passengers, mostly businessmen from Hong Kong and Taiwan, probably on their way to Russia for some kind of business deal, trying to make things happen.
And this is where the story takes this really, really strange turn. Relief Captain Kodrinsky. He was taking his two kids, Eldar, his 15-year-old son, and Yana, his 13-year-old daughter, on their first trip abroad. A big family vacation.
Now, here's the thing, and it's something you wouldn't believe if it weren't, tragically true. Kodrinsky, he let his kids into the cockpit during the flight.
Like while he was on duty. At one point, there were 5 people up there. Kodrinsky, the co-pilot, Piskaryov, and both of his kids.
It's a clear violation of all safety protocols. You just can't have that level of distraction in a cockpit.
It's hard to even imagine. Children up in the cockpit of a commercial airliner. And you can kind of guess what happened next, right? It starts innocently enough. Yana, the daughter, she gets to sit in the captain's seat.
And Kodrinsky, being a dad, he wants to give her a bit of a thrill, so he starts messing with the autopilot heading controls just to give her the feeling of flying the plane. Of course, she wasn't actually in control.
But it's just that break in protocol. It sets a dangerous precedent. It's almost like opening a Pandora's box.
Exactly. And sure enough, about 8 minutes later, Eldar, the son, he takes his turn in the captain's seat. And this seemingly innocent moment, it's where everything starts to unravel. Eldar, without realizing it, he puts some pressure on the control column, the yoke, enough to actually partially override the autopilot.
We're not talking quick nudge. This went on for like 30 seconds. You got to imagine. It's like pushing against a robot arm that's trying to move in a different direction.
Right, and it's not like he completely disengaged the autopilot, but his input did cause the ailerons, those are the things on the wings that control the roll of the plane, those switched to manual control. But the autopilot was still controlling other aspects of the flight. So you've got this situation where the plane's sort of in this weird state of partial manual control.
And here's the kicker, and this is just mind-blowing. When this happened, a silent indicator light came on in the cockpit. Silent. Why?
Why?
Well, it turns out the pilots, with their experience flying those old Soviet planes, they were used to audible warnings. They just weren't accustomed to looking for a visual cue like that.
Right, they were so used to hearing an alarm, a buzzer or something, that this silent light just didn't register with them. It's almost like a design flaw, right? I mean, you think about it, wouldn't you want a warning system that's consistent across different types of aircraft?
I mean, it just seems like common sense, right?
Right.
So there they are, completely oblivious to this critical warning. And it's Eldar, the son. He's the first one to notice something's wrong. He sees the plane starting to bank to the right.
And then, to make matters worse, the flight path indicator on their instruments, it starts to show this 180-degree turn. But that's not what they intended to do, right? But because the plane kept turning, the display kept showing this full 180.
So imagine you're the pilot. You see this, and you're thinking, wait, are we in a holding pattern? It's like their instruments were giving them the wrong information, or at least information that was easily misinterpreted in that situation.
And the bank angle, it just keeps increasing. We're talking way beyond what's normal for the A310, way past 45 degrees, getting close to 90. And at that angle, well, the plane starts losing altitude fast.
We're talking a rapid descent. And the G-forces at that point, they're so intense it would have been almost impossible for anyone to move, let alone try to control a plane.
Just to give you a bit of a physics lesson here, when a plane banks that steeply, it loses a lot of its lift. To stay at the same altitude, you need a much higher airspeed, which they didn't have. So they're basically fighting basic physics at this point.
And the autopilot, which is still partially engaged, it tries to do its job. It pitches the nose up, trying to compensate for the lost aileron control. It even increases the engine thrust.
But all this does is push the plane closer to a stall. That's where the wings just stop producing enough lift to keep the plane in the air. And the autopilot, it can't handle the situation, so it shuts down completely. The display goes blank. It's like the plane's computer just gave up.
So now, it's all on the pilots, and they've got this critical situation on their hands. The plane's stalling, and the autopilot's gone offline. But the Airbus, it's got this built-in safety feature. When it senses a stall, it automatically tries to recover by pushing the nose down into a dive to gain speed.
And that sudden change in G-forces, it gives Kudrinsky a chance to get back into his seat. The first officer, Piskaryov, he manages to pull the plane out of the dive, but he overcorrects.
He pulls up too hard, and the plane goes almost vertical. Up, up, up. And guess what? That causes another stall.
It's a classic case of, when your instincts actually work against you. In a situation like that, sometimes the best thing to do is nothing.
But it's hard to think straight when you're in a crisis like that.
Yeah.
Adrenaline's pumping, you're thousands of feet in the air, and the plane's stalling. So they stall again, and this time they go into a spin. An uncontrolled rotation and descent. Just imagine the terror on that plane.
And during this first spin, they almost got it back. Kudrinsky almost had control, but he pulled back on the yoke too hard, and that just killed their airspeed.
Then a rudder input, that's the thing that controls the yaw, the left and right movement of the nose, it sends them into a second spin. This time, a flat spin.
And a flat spin, well, that's just about the worst thing that can happen to you in a plane. It's like, imagine a Frisbee spinning and falling at the same time. It makes it really hard to use the normal controls.
Incredibly, they get control again. They level the wings. But by this point, it's just too late. They're too low. There's no time to recover from the dive. The plane crashes at 12:58 a.m., only 16 minutes after those kids first stepped into the cockpit.
And it hits the ground hard. They estimated the vertical speed at impact was around 70 meters per second. I mean,
Yes.
that's just incredibly fast.
Yeah.
No one survived. All 75 people on board were killed instantly.
The landing gear was still up. The passengers were all strapped in. It just shows how sudden it was. No time for anything, no warning, no mayday call, nothing. It's chilling.
And here's what really gets me. The investigators, they concluded that if the pilots had just let go of the controls after that first spin, the plane might have actually recovered on its own. Like, the plane was designed to stabilize itself.
But in that moment, panic set in, right?
Mm.
They just reacted instinctively, and it made things worse.
Yeah.
And to top it all off, there wasn't a single thing wrong with the plane. No mechanical failures, nothing.
The wreckage, they found it in this remote mountainous area. And initially, Aeroflot, they denied that there were kids in the cockpit. You can kind of understand why they did that, but it came out eventually.
Yeah, there was this transcript of the cockpit voice recording that got published in a Moscow magazine. It pretty much laid out the whole thing. Those last few minutes must have been just chaotic.
You can hear the crew in the recording. They were so close to getting things back under control, but, the whole situation, the kids, their unfamiliarity with the Airbus, it was all just too much.
This crash, it was a huge wake-up call for the entire aviation industry. It showed just how important those safety regulations are, especially the ones about who's allowed in the cockpit.
Absolutely. It's not just about, following rules for the sake of it. It's about understanding that even small deviations from protocol can have these huge unintended consequences.
And it really highlights how human factors play into these accidents, right? It wasn't just about a technical failure. It was about a series of human decisions, human actions that led to this tragedy.
It makes you think, right? It makes you think about your own life, your own work. What are those things that seem small but could actually have massive consequences if you're not careful?
That's the takeaway here, folks. A seemingly harmless gesture, a dad wanting to show his kid something cool, it set off this insane chain of events that ended in disaster.
It's a reminder that safety is fragile, and that even in those moments when you feel like you're in control, sometimes the best thing to do is just let go.
And that's it for this deep dive. But keep those questions coming, keep thinking critically, and we'll be back soon to explore another corner of this weird, complex world we live in. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and thanks for listening.